Jessica Crow, and I am the host of Change Leader Insights, which we talk about leadership development, change, all of those things. And I am so excited, so very excited to have with me today, Doug Miller. So I know Doug from many, many years ago. Doug is a senior director and master coach in the School of Leadership for DaVita, which is a leading Fortune 500 provider of kidney care. In his role, he facilitates leadership development programs. He coaches executives. He really creates space for self-reflection and growth. He's a lifelong learner. He's got degrees and certifications in business, psychology, executive coaching, and he's actually a master certified coach through the International Coach Federation, which if you're in the land of change leadership, you're likely familiar with ICF. There's a lot of synergies between the two. And I'm just so pleased to have him here to share his wisdom with us. Doug, can you please give us a little backstory, right? Your origin story, who you are, little personal details, if you don't mind. So yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug. And thanks so much, Jessica, for having me. I'll start by saying I have a beautiful, amazing partner in life. Jennifer, it's my wife. We got married in the year 2000. Best move I ever made, getting married in the year 2000. I never have to do math.
That makes sense.
Right? And then we have two boys. We're on the brink of empty nesting. So two boys, one's in college, one's 18, and navigating figuring out what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So it's a full alive house and tons of stuff happening. My origin story, like how far should I go back, Jessica? I mean, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, to Lee and Linda Mill. Like, you don't want to go that far back.
So part of the work that you do, you're in a role with DaVita that is all about developing leaders in the organization and helping people find their own inner voice and clarity. So maybe I would love to hear the origin story from Cleveland on maybe just kind of what brought you to this place, because you and I have talked, and you're sort of in your dream job right now and the work that you're doing, but how you got to that point, kind of what was the spark or what was the catalyst for going down this path of self-discovery that has led you to be a leader of leaders in DaVita today?
Yeah. So a couple of pivotal moments that really shaped me and created this pathway in front of me. And I'll share this, like, I don't know if your listeners are interested, but we do this as an actual activity with teams and with leaders, like going back in history and sourcing out these stories of your life that shaped and made you who you are, and can just be such a beautiful way to build trust and collaboration across teams. So, one of my stories is my mom was dedicated to drug and alcohol prevention, and she signed the family up for a family communication skills workshop. We went through, gathered with a couple of other families. We gathered in someone's living room for, 6 or 7 weeks. And at the end of it, I'm still confused how this happened. But at the end of it, the leader of it looked at my father and looked at me and said, "You two should facilitate the next session we do."
Wow.
And so
how old were you?
I was 14 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So my dad and I start facilitating communication skills workshops for families in the community. And like that shaped me in a particular way. And then fast forward a couple of years into high school, I got handpicked. A couple of kids out of every clique got handpicked, thrown into a retreat setting to be taught listening skills that included video feedback. So here I am at like 16, bawling my eyes out with all the other kids that are from the other cliques that we all realize we're all suffering in the same way very quickly. And then we and it's all videotaped. So then you assess your listening skills by watching it. I think we got better listening training than some of the therapists get in their education today. I don't know if that's true or not. I make that up, but
it was very impactful is kind of what you're saying.
Hugely impactful in terms of deep that's where introspection, self-reflection, powerful questions, listening creating a space for people to discover who they are, got born out of that experience. So
Wow.
those two experiences, and then there was this moment fast forward where I thought I was heading towards becoming a therapist, and three things happened. I talked to a therapist who's like, "Have you really thought about this job?" I had a pro bono consultant working with me. I was working in a nonprofit. I had a consultant working with me personally that
Uh-huh.
was like blowing my mind. And then I took a class in nonprofit leadership, which it was kind of a survey of all the current theories in organizational psychology, organization development, et cetera. And those three things kind of intersected at the same time. And I was like, I want to do organizational work and work with
Yeah.
healthy people, helping them have more fulfillment,
Yeah.
reducing suffering, and things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, that's pretty incredible though that you had those experiences at such a young age, because many of us don't have those, and we're leading people and teams and organizations. So to have that sort of um that training, that development, and to have that carry through with you to those moments, that moment when you realized you wanted to be someone who was helping. I mean, what a captive audience too, the organization, the level of impact, the scale is so significant. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And the some of the stuff that you and I have talked about too is, when we think about the work that happens in an organization, all change, all strategy, it gets implemented through the people that work there. And there's ways of leading and managing that can be through force. And then there's ways of leading and managing that can be through influence and inspiration. And that's why that self piece, that, how we are, how we show up in the world is so important. Can you share your perspectives on why the work that you're doing is so valuable for not only the individuals who are going through the training and the coaching that you provide, but what is the direct impact on the organization as a result of helping develop people in the way that you have been developed?
Yeah. I um there's like 1,000 different thoughts I'm having right now, but I'll enter the conversation by using a definition that Kouzes and Posner holds
Mhm.
around leadership, that leadership is the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations.
Yeah.
And when I use that definition, people usually reject the struggle word. Like, why does it
Oh,
have to be hard? Why is that negative? Why is that negativity in there? But if you think about all great things that occur in the world, there's been effort, there's been
right.
hard work. Those things that that we're all most proud of that we've accomplished have taken effort and struggle
Mhm.
and work and da da da. So if I'm if people are going to follow you, if I'm going to follow you, then I need to be mobilized, and I need to believe in you, and I need to
Mhm.
trust you, and I need to understand that when you tell me something that like I just need to like have this deep trust that that's accurate and true and da da da.
Mhm.
So so I also borrow a little bit from Patrick Lencioni's work that the foundation of any team is trust. The
Mhm.
depth of that trust, and Patrick goes on to talk about trust, the dysfunction that
Mhm.
disrupts trust is when people are not open and vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? So to be open and vulnerable, I think we need to do the self work and the self-reflective work to understand who we are.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of different ways of doing that, but that self-reflective work then allows, I think, for a cleaner, less, I'll say, staticky expression of who you are in the world. The more you're
Yeah.
aware of your emotions, like I have sometimes we'll use this phrase, are your emotions having you, or are
Mhm.
you having an emotion?
Mhm.
And the self work allows us to have emotions, but not be controlled or let the emotion to have us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if these things are resonating with you around how that self-leadership becomes a key in building depthful, trusting relationships that then people are going to buy into your leadership and be much more
Yeah.
willing to follow you.
Yeah, no, that absolutely resonates because when I think about that in the context of, an organization implementing a change of some sort, whether it's a new technology, a change in the structure of the organization, whatever it is, part of what change management leaders do is figure out how to take people through that process. And we come in with their tools and our processes, and we're really excited about that. But that's only part of the equation. Really, what it comes down to is what you just described. Are the people that are in the position or have some level of influence able to carry and get people to mobilize because they trust and believe in what they're saying? And you started the conversation by telling your origin story and figuring out your why and your purpose and how that led you to where you are, which immediately helped me be like, oh, I'm listening. I hear Doug. What he's saying is authentic and I'm connecting with that. And so storytelling is one way to build trust. What are some other ways that leaders can build trust either through that self-reflection or, what else can they be doing to help create or just empower themselves to be more impactful leaders? So when they are in a position to lead a team or a project or some sort of change, they are able to connect with the people that they work with more meaningfully to accelerate that trust process. Do you have any suggestions there?
Totally. So I'll start super simply with just a
Yeah.
phrase and this was given to me by a mentor of mine early in my career. The best way to build trust is to talk about trust.
Mm.
So just a simple question of like, what builds trust for you? This is what builds trust for me. Like we've built out an activity that is like a check-in question or a team process for the team to all be sharing collectively what builds trust for you, collect those maybe on post-it notes, on the wall and
Yeah.
see the themes, and then build agreements for the team out of those themes so that people have some predictability. The other side of that is what breaks trust for you.
Yeah.
And have a team conversation or a one-on-one conversation around this is what breaks trust for me. So that is a very simple answer. And then you can go deeper, and this is where the self-reflection starts to show up in terms of, are you clear? Like, what are your guiding principles or philosophies, or as simple as what are your values?
Right.
And being very clear about those values, and then speaking about them explicitly and talking about them. Or, I have a colleague who one of his favorite phrases when we're stuck in a team setting and we're trying to figure out where to go or how to make a decision, he loves to say, how would our values guide us here? Right? Which is great work. Or you could also do this as another trust building activity for the team is do a values activity where everybody's identifying their values, everyone's sharing what those values mean. You're starting to see the overlap and the synergies that exist across that.
Yeah.
And then, what are your beliefs? We do an activity where we have leaders actually articulate what do they believe. And, typically the first set of beliefs that a leader will identify are the ones they think they should believe.
Yes.
And then we push back and say, yeah, that's like, that's, motherhood and apple pie or whatever that phrase is. Go deeper, right?
Yeah.
So I love one of our leaders talks, I get chills when I think about it. One of our leaders talks about this belief of life is fragile.
Yeah.
And then tells a story out of his life of the fragility and how quickly he lost someone. And, and that like,
Brings, yeah.
that has me buy into his leadership,
Yeah.
that he's thinking about life that way and willing to share open and vulnerably about a story of a moment where he experienced the fragility of life.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredibly powerful. And I think that by having that level of self-awareness and the ability to communicate in that way, it really does drive home something that we're all seeking when we are in an organization, that connection, that belonging, that being part of something. And when we don't show that humanness, it limits our ability to do that in many ways. And then in turn, it limits our a level of leadership. And I have, having benefited from going through sessions with you in group sessions and other sessions, I know the power of what you're talking about because I've experienced it firsthand. So keep up the great work with all of that, because I know how pivotal and influential it is and how it helped me think differently about my own level of leadership and how I was showing up. So, I think DaVita talks about ripples, sending ripples,
Yep.
having that leadership experience. What about the topic of conscious leadership? So this is something in the change management, leadership, coaching world that I'm starting to hear more and more about. Um, how would you, based on kind of what we've talked about, what is being a conscious leader? What would that mean to you? Or what does that mean to you, rather? How do you think about that?
Yeah, my mind instantly goes to this model that's been around forever called the Joe Hari window.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google it. There's some great YouTube videos on it if you want to understand it, but it's basically looking at what do you know about yourself that you can see, and then that you reveal to other people, and then what do
Mm-hmm.
you know about yourself that you might not reveal to other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a 2x2. Everything's a 2x2 today, but and then the other piece is the parts that you don't know about yourself, but other people can see about you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's your blind spots. So
Mm-hmm.
those are those dynamics and those habits and those patterns and those unconscious protective mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
that might be, really served you really well in getting to where you are,
Mm.
and now are limiting you from becoming who you really want to be, or limiting
Yeah.
you to being successful in the role that you're in now. An example is often people are crushing an individual contributor role by
Mm-hmm.
doing everything at a certain level of excellence, and then they get into management, and that ability no longer is going to help them be successful. They now need to find a different way. So at any rate, finding ways, good, accurate ways to get information about what is in your blind spot,
Mm-hmm.
and so that you can have more conscious choice around how you're going to behave, how you're going to even emotionally react, like
Mm-hmm.
have more choice in your emotional reactions, by getting some insight into your blind spots. So that could be done through an effective 360, like
Mm-hmm.
getting a feedback mechanism from people all around you. That can be done by having a coach, an external coach. That could be done by journaling. However,
Mm.
journaling gets talked about, but a lot of people kind of have an aversion to it.
Yeah.
And in my coaching work, when I'm working with executives, the thing that I find makes a huge difference is when you're getting very explicit and specific questions that are directing your attention into the dynamics that are occurring in the moment of some
Mm.
disruption that you're working on. And then being able to unpack that and see things that you couldn't see by just reflecting on it consistently over time.
And
So that's where my brain goes around consciousness. And then I will share that I hold a belief that if people are doing that self-reflection and are able to see their beliefs, that there is an
mm-hmm.
organic urge and this evolutionary urge towards healing and
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
And that consciousness then, in my mind, someone who becomes more conscious and more at choice and less operating out of automatic habits and beliefs and et cetera, will move towards a healthier expression of themselves, will move towards a healing of some sort.
I was going to ask, and thank you for walking through those different examples too, because one of my questions was, can you do this alone? Is journaling sufficient, or having somebody guide you through that process? And you gave several examples of ways to approach that. As you're going through that healing experience, do you find that, it's not always easy, right? When those things come up, it's like, oh, how would you, if you were coaching someone who is going through that process of becoming more conscious of the patterns and habits and beliefs that they have carried with them that may not get them to the next point, how do they safely, or at least move through that experience without getting discouraged, or because it can be challenging to confront those things and realize there's a different, potentially better way? What are some tips that you have for individuals who are going through that process of self-reflection and coming up with some things they don't love seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, being a guy who is tries to be totally self-sufficient and not dependent or reliant on anybody ever, anytime, right? Like yes, there's healing and health that people can support themselves through. And you're just going to go faster, and it's going to be guided a little bit easier. And also, to have someone supportive, or a supportive community, also normalizes it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there are some moments when I'm on the brink of a personal breakthrough that I feel like an absolute weirdo. Like,
Totally.
I
Yeah,
am
I've been
like
there.
if anyone knew what I was thinking, they would get not want to be with, right? And then the surprising thing is, anytime I actually get the courage to talk about it,
Yeah.
there's some level of association that other people have.
Yeah.
So that just is like, oh, you have imposter syndrome also? Like,
Yeah.
I never would have thought you would have
Yeah.
imposter syndrome like I have it, and would be
Yeah.
walking into this meeting scared, and your nervous system picked up.
Yeah.
Really? That's not my image of you, but that's yours. So anyway, so yes, having people to support you, and that could be professional, like that could be, a coach. There's a lot of work emerging today about trauma and the impacts of trauma and how we carry trauma. And a lot of our current unconscious behavioral patterns are born out of a trauma response.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff that therapy can really just nail and help with, and be supportive. I joke around sometimes that, like, in the past, I think it was about 3 years ago, we had more therapists supporting our family than family members. It was like, oh my God. Like,
Like, bring them in, bring them on.
right.
Yeah.
It's just like there was a lot happening, and da-da-da. But you can also go find this in community, right?
Yeah.
Or you can generate community. I love this phrase that, when I say the start of it, pretty much everyone can finish it. You are a product of your
Environment.
Yep.
Uh,
So
That's true though, right?
what environments are you putting yourself in?
Yeah.
Are you doing another lunch with the person that is colluding and having a little bit of bitch and moan about what's going on?
Right.
Or are you choosing to do something, hang out with people that are proactively wrestling with these things and trying to solve them and move them
Yeah.
forward? So who are you hanging around with? I love we had a speaker once said that the most predictive thing you do around the success in your life is choosing the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And it's hard too, to be very intentional. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's colleagues that are in your zone. And it takes effort and it takes intention. So that what you said resonates with me, and I'm sure others. But it definitely takes focus, and being clear about kind of what you want to get out of your life experience, so to speak.
Yeah.
One more question for you. So we've talked a lot about the importance of developing self-awareness so you can become, and all the work that can go into that, finding your story, figuring out how to build trust with your team. So when you're in a position to lead change or implement something, some sort of change with yourself or others, you're kind of on that path. When we think about this at a more macro level, right? There's an enterprise shift that needs to happen. And you've got thousands of stakeholders that you don't know personally, that don't have that level of trust with you. And you've got a timeline. How do what would be some recommendations that you would have to the leaders in the organization, where if they're responsible for doing something at scale and you've got stakeholders who are confused, who don't understand, who are passively resisting or aggressively resisting, how do you, what are some of the tips and recommendations for helping mobilize large groups of people? What would you recommend to people that are listening and watching this podcast?
Yeah, I'll start with building on your comment around storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a huge fan of Nancy Duarte's work. And she is the person that supported An Inconvenient Truth, the creation of the movie An Inconvenient Truth. Al Gore. My God, I'm embarrassed. I couldn't locate the name for a minute. Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. At any rate, in her book Resonate, she maps out some really pivotal speeches, and one of the distinctions she makes is around creating contrast around the world that is today versus the world that could be. Right? And then maps like how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his speech created that contrast throughout his I Have a Dream speech. How Steve Jobs did that throughout his introduction of the iPhone, anchoring on the pain and suffering of today versus the freedom that could exist in the future. So that's one super quick reference point, super kind of tactical in terms of that. The second thing I would say is that we have this graph that has time on it along the bottom, and then the horizontal is looking at the processing that people go through in terms of when a change is introduced. And I think oftentimes we as leaders forget that we found out about that change a long time
before.
And we went through our process. Now we're leaders, so we probably also went through it faster than our frontline teammates and employees might do. So but when we get to high levels of commitment and engagement and visionary, and then we go to introduce it, I think we tend to forget, wait, I had a little resistance when I first heard about this. I was concerned about how this was going to impact me. I am so committed now that when I hear that from my teammates, I actually get pissed off at them to some degree. No, this is really awesome. It's really
how
cool.
Can't you see this?
Can't you see? And it's don't you remember that you went through? So I think just that visual is very helpful in terms of and then you can look at it as senior leadership and then middle management and then the people that actually have to enact the change. And just remembering that can then help when you're introducing the change. And I love this analogy. And I got this from when I was raising my boys. We went to a really weird school that had no academic content in it. It was mostly emotionally based. And we had to take classes as parents in order to send our kids there so that we were using the same problem solving communication skills at home that they were using in the school.
Wow.
And one of the analogies that came out of my learning there is that when we're emotional, it's like our brain is a balloon and it's filled with all the emotion. And there's nothing else that can happen
Right.
until you empty out all that emotion. And so any rational thinking is just going to bounce right off that balloon because there's no room for it.
Yeah.
And so often as leaders, we want to go to the rational explanation around why this is going to matter to you when our employees are sitting there with this balloon full of emotion.
Yeah.
And then they start to let it out and we react like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So they stop their emotional expression.
Yeah.
And then it leaks out in the weirdest, most messed up ways, right?
Super
And
disruptive. Yeah.
you say, yeah, passive resistance. Like, let's be honest, like most people are not passively
Yeah, that's
resistant, they're
fair.
actively
Yeah.
resisting because they've got all that emotion contained. They haven't had anything to do with it. So I
Yeah.
think that there's a way for us as leaders to create opportunities for people to empty their
To just
emotional
vent. Mm.
balloons.
Mm-hmm.
And before we start pushing so hard on them to get excited about a future,
Yes.
right? So we
That's
do a
so
process,
important.
we do a process where we lay out a bunch of pictures and we say, pick a picture that represents how you, because we're creating these guardrails where we don't
Yeah.
want to hand a person a microphone and let them vent for 30 minutes and right. But
Right.
we pick a picture that represents how you feel about this, hold up the picture, paste all the pictures on the wall that everyone holds up about how they feel about the change, stand
Yeah.
in front of that, talk about the themes, talk about it. And I actually, when I'm teaching leaders how to do this, I talk like you want to act like you're at a memorial service when you're looking at all those
That's
pictures on
right.
the
The
wall.
grief and loss and letting go piece. That's that to create way for the new beginning. That's brilliant.
And then pose the question, we have a choice around whether we're going to continue to carry this around with us
Yeah.
or whether we're going to let it go and decide to create a new future. And as a symbol of our letting go, let's all take our pictures off the wall. And I happen to have this ratty old suitcase I got from the secondhand store. Let's pack our baggage up,
That
right?
is so
And
cool.
everyone puts it in as a symbol of being willing to let go. And then
Yeah.
pick a new picture that represents the future you want to live into.
Wow.
A very contained way to let people let the energy out of their balloon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that
That is cool. I mean, it's like a physical, mental, the whole experience is just right there. That's incredible.
and then you've got all the good pictures. Now you create an artifact around that. Have everyone stand in front of all the good
Yeah.
pictures, take a picture, print that out, have it on everyone's desk, have that in,
That's their
PowerPoint
shared vision.
slides. Like, here we
Yeah.
are, we're creating our future and continue to reinforce. We talk about how, depending on, cultural anthropologists will talk about the artifacts of a culture. What are the artifacts that you are creating to create the future? What are the
Yes.
rituals and symbols that you're embracing to create the future of that change you're wanting to create?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Doug, I have been hanging on to every word you have said. I have learned from this conversation and I was thinking about, oh, I'm going to apply this to my current work. I'm so excited. This was incredible. You are so smart and generous with your time and your knowledge. I am beyond grateful for this conversation that we've had today. I have no doubt that the people that are tuning in are going to hang on to the very end of this so they can get all the great stuff from you. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for being
Yeah.
willing to connect with
Yeah.
me and talk today. I am so
I'm
grateful.
I'm deeply committed to reducing suffering on the planet. And
Yes.
I know that
Yeah.
there's a lot of suffering that gets generated around change. So I love
Yeah.
your commitment and the work that you're doing. And
Thank
this
you.
commitment that you have inside of your work around self-leadership is really
Yeah.
important. But if people want more,
And where can they find you?
I'm working to share more through LinkedIn. So if you
Perfect.
just go to Doug Lee is my middle name, Lee, DougLeeMiller.com, it'll redirect you to my LinkedIn page.
Fantastic.
Follow me there. And then if you
Podcast too, right?
Yep, there's a
Okay.
podcast that I do through DaVita here. It's called DaVita Leadership Insights.
Mm-hmm.
Grace Berman and I interview a bunch of different leaders, and it's meant to be a storytelling podcast
Yeah.
where we get leaders to tell their failure and recovery stories. So it's not
Very
just like,
cool.
listen how cool we are. It's a little bit of like, listen to how I messed this up and
Yeah.
what I learned.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That would give a lot of wonderful examples and also give people the confidence, I would imagine, to do the same.
Yep.
Again, sending those ripples. I love that. This has been such a treat. Thank you again for making time. I'll make sure in the show notes to include all of the links to get in touch with you or follow you and learn from you. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.